A majority of foreign residents who arrive in Japan are only able to open a JP Post Bank account. There's all kinds of restrictions since the pandemic broke, particularly the residency rule. We last year launched MobalPay as a solution to that problem, which was a way of getting people who weren't able to get a SIM with a phone number to buy one from us. Subsequently, it's become its own standalone product, and it's serving a totally different need than we probably had anticipated.
You have just heard from Declan Somers, Chief Executive Officer of Mobal Communications. Their MobalPay is a convenient alternative to a traditional bank card, offering easy and quick setup and usage for expats. It's an easy-to-use prepaid MasterCard, issued in Japan, designed specifically to meet the needs of foreign residents in Japan. So let us dive right in.
I think we came to Japan around the same time, and from then on you had a very interesting path.
I didn't stay in Japan, which strangely, I wanted to stay in Japan, but visa issues, work contracts all ended. So naturally, I went back to my home country, Ireland, and ran a tour company there. It's funny because before I left for Ireland, I was actually in the telecoms field. I was working with a company who are now our supplier to a great degree. It's an MVNO in Japan. It operates in the B2C sector. So I was working for them and the contract ended. So I ended up going back to Ireland, becoming a tour guide to Japanese people in the main. There wasn't enough Japanese people, so I started a tour company for everybody around the world. And then I got a phone call from the chairman of Mobal, who knew me from our working in telecoms in Japan. And he suggested I meet him in a strange country called Malawi in Africa, and I'd never been. So I said I would go, and he never turned up. But I met his nephew there. I was well looked after, and I fell in love with the country. And I ended up seeing what Mobal, the company in the UK, who I'm now working for, I saw what they were doing firsthand in Malawi and Africa with their profits raised in Japan. And I decided I need to be part of this. It was too good to be on the outside looking in.
And so you spent 3 years in Malawi?
3 years in Malawi. You've done your homework. Excellent. Yes, I did. Yeah. First as a volunteer, and then I stayed. It was meant to be, as I say, a 2-week trip. But after my 2-week trip, I sold the tour company to the drivers, convinced them. And within that year, I was in Malawi wondering what the heck am I going to do there? But it was a fabulous 3 years.
And the language I probably couldn't pronounce, Chua?
It's the Bantu language. Yeah. Somehow it's not the same as Swahili, but it's in the same family.
And you managed to become fluent in that as well.
No, Malawi is quite an unusual African country in that area because Mozambique and perhaps Zambia and others, for example, Mozambique would have been a Portuguese colony in the past. So they speak a different language, but Malawi was a British protectorate. In other words, it was a UK colony. So they still have English. Not only do they have English, they use it to a wonderful level.
So it's one of the easiest countries then to come to and get stuck with.
It is. In the tour guide books, they call it Africa for beginners, but I wouldn't say that necessarily. That's what they say, and I understand. It's a very peaceful country, an extremely friendly country, and it has a nickname which we use in Japan for a separate project. Its nickname is the warm heart of Africa. We have a coffee business as well, which I'd like to mention in passing, a nonprofit coffee subscription business, and it's called the Warm Hearts Coffee Club, which Mobal, our business profits, fund that to raise more donations to send more money to Malawi.
So is Mobile completely not for profit, or there's a percentage that goes into this charity work?
It's not a percentage. It's a very strange way of working. The majority of our profits go to charity, but how do we define the majority? First of all, we have to make money. So we operate on a for-profit motive. When the money is calculated at the end of the year, we want to maximize that from a taxation perspective. So the bigger the donation we can make within the calendar year, the less corporation tax applies, the more of a donation we can make. So we have a very tough conversation at the end of the year. How much money can we actually give? Last year, we gave more than our accumulated gross profit, more than because we gave the accumulation from previous years. We can continue to do that every year, but there was a huge ask in terms of building projects last year. This year, we're in the process of purchasing a farm to grow the food that we're currently buying to feed 18,000 kids on a daily basis. So there's always a tension between the money and the mission. We like to think we're getting it right, but sometimes we need more money to invest in the business and we don't have it.
On Mobile, It's not a new company. They've been in this business for a long time. And you saw on the timeline, the first cards to tourists into Japan was like 1991.
That's right. It's a bit embarrassing almost to talk about this, but we started in 1989 as a telecoms business. And at that time, nobody had discovered a SIM card in a handset. So we rented the handsets. And we also rented large handsets at the time because it wasn't what the iPhone didn't come along for years later. And we rented to people who were maybe climbing mountains like Mount Everest or working on construction sites. So we were into satellite phones as well as the usual mobile phone. Now, we've since completely divested from that and we're entirely focused on Japan. Now, I won't say entirely focused on Japan. I should say one of our businesses also supports the Japanese community in the United States with voice product as well.
So it's in and out of Japan in whatever direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then for the inbound into Japan, given with the US based tourists or people who move here, that's the largest demographic.
The largest demographic for our audience for the SIMs is definitely the American
Okay.
market, definitely. But it's not necessarily tourists. We're more focused on the resident market, those who are, as you say, coming to work, study, and live. However, there was another audience we weren't really getting, and that was the closer Asian countries. And when we did our research, the biggest problem they had was they were in Japan, they needed a phone number or a SIM card, but they couldn't purchase one because they didn't have a payment card to do so. We last year launched MobalPay as a solution to that problem, which was a way of getting people who weren't able to get a SIM with a phone number to buy one from us. Subsequently, it's become its own standalone product and it's serving a totally different need than we probably had anticipated. Yes, it's helping people buy SIM cards, but that's not the main reason. I think a majority of foreign residents who arrive in Japan are only able to open a JP Post Bank account. There's all kinds of restrictions since the pandemic broke, particularly the residency rule. You know that when you arrive in Japan, you're immediately issued with a residence card if you have a visa to work or live or study. However, the banks view you in a different capacity. They don't view you as being a resident until at least 6 months have elapsed. And that is a kind of a disjointed way of thinking between banks and immigration, and it causes a lot of angst. So you can walk into a post office and within a couple of hours, you can walk away with a bank book, which is also a throwback to a different generation, but it's cute. And they'll give you in the post later a cash card, which is pretty useless unless you want to withdraw your own money. So they don't give you an option immediately to go shopping online or have a payment card to link with apps. You need all of these things when you arrive in Japan the most because you need to order food from Uber Eats or you need to get your furniture delivered from IKEA. All of these things need an app or at least a phone number. So it's a kind of a chicken and an egg race that people who arrive here struggle to overcome. And hopefully we're in the business of providing a solution there.
I'd like to think that today we should be able to solve everything digitally. On most phones, you can do an eSIM today. Would that not allow you to open a PayPay account and use that as a prepaid card in the same way you use your MasterCard?
Can you use PayPay in lieu of a prepaid card? The answer is probably no. Yes, for convenience store payments, no for online store payments. So, for example, if you wanted to buy an airline ticket, PayPay is not the solution for that.
Could I do a virtual MasterCard instead of getting the physical in the mail?
No, but you could use it in the same way. And I think this is the most important thing. I have the MobalPay card and I use it on a daily basis, but I never take it out of my wallet. It's just there. It's linked to so many apps. In particular, I'm a big fan of the non-PayPay, interestingly, digital payment apps. I prefer Rakuten Pay because I actually use Rakuten Marketplace. And I also like Dibarai, which is from Docomo, but you don't necessarily need a Docomo phone number, which is obviously in our interest. With Dibarai, which is probably one of the lesser well-known digital payment apps, you can link all the points you earn from your various shopping, buying coffees and supermarket shopping. You can link it to your Amazon Japan account. And I use Amazon Japan because it's in English and it's probably my go-to marketplace. I also order my supermarket supplies using Life on Amazon and I get my discounts all applied to any shopping or supermarket shopping. So I have a little circular model in place. I shop, I spend, I earn points, and then I shop again on Amazon and I get discounts.
For any entry into the local market for any of these financial services, whether it's brokerage or payments, is that you have these big ecosystems of economic zones, they
Hmm.
call it, right, of these point systems. And yes, people try to stay in Rakuten or Docomo or the AU points. And if you can't offer that, then it's a big hurdle to actually get into the market. So if you can link this card to the D points as you described and connect that, then you solve that problem as well.
Yeah, I would be what you might call a point jockey. I jump from one economic zone to the next. I don't stick around. I also make great use of, we all use Suica or Passmo. I actually use both because it's one for work, one for personal use. And to use the app function on your phone, which obviously requires either a Japanese Android or an iPhone from anywhere in the world, you again need a Japanese issued payment card. So a lot of our customers, when they find out that they can link their mobile pay to their mobile Suica, they're onto a winner because immediately then you can make use of a very interesting standalone point app, the JRE point app, which gives you free credit for Suica. So it does feel like the moment you get a Japanese payment card in Japan, your life, okay, it's all about points here, but you go up a level. It's almost like you're playing Super Mario and you've made it to the next world. You do feel like you've opened up a new door in your life. And without that, you're being asked all these questions. Do you have this point, that point card? And you don't in general. But the moment you're in, it's fun. It's actually, it's so much fun that some of the apps, and I'm sure you do the same, Rakuten Pay have a spinning wheel, a virtual spinning wheel, as do Diborai, which if you're really bored and you want to earn yourself a few points, you can just on the train click and the little ball pops out and tells you 3 yen or Zanen nagara hazare desu, which means no joy.
When you look at the card customers, do you disclose numbers? How many of these have you issued in circulation, and how does it break down from
Hmm.
the population? And we said Americans first, and then
It's quite a new service, and I'll explain why the numbers only really grew in the last half a year. It's because we didn't have an easy top up method. Today, 90% of our users use cash at convenience store as their favorite method. Previously, we were asking them to go to an ATM and top up, and the Japanese interface on even in English language in Mizuho Bank, the ATM was just a hurdle too high. So people struggled to put money on the card. Now that we have a very simple, you get an email with a barcode, you click the barcode, you show the barcode to the person working in the convenience store method, everybody's up and running. So we went from very low thousands to now higher thousands. I won't disclose the entire figures very quickly with that little fix. And the demographic that grew was the Asian market, in particular the Filipino and Nepalese market, that area. And we're learning a lot because mainly they are navigating our website in English, perhaps using translation tools a little bit. But for Filipino people, they're comfortable to work in English. Nepalese people, the younger generation, have English as well. And when they come to Japan, there's no chance that they have a card from their own home country because in Nepal in particular, any Nepalese issued card only works there, Bhutan or India. So they're looking for a new solution the moment they arrive in Japan. However, when we did launch this product, it was intended to bring on our, let's say, Western world audience to help those who are struggling with a payment card in Japan to get a SIM card. So we have two very different audiences. We have the Western world English speaking market, let's say, and then we have the closer Asian market. And the closer Asian market are not necessarily looking for the SIM solution. They're looking for something to allow them to go shopping. So when we do user feedback and we ask people, what are you using the card for? We have these people who are into the apps. They're talking about how they utilize the Starbucks rewards, to get themselves cheaper coffee on a regular basis. And it's a real learning experience because I'm taking all the advice as well. We recently had a jet teacher in Gumaken in Maebashi, and she was particularly interested in getting access to a cycling share app because Maebashi residents get a very good discount on that app. But none of the local cards would work, even her local bank card. So MobalPay, we actually did a bit of jiggery pokery, a little bit of magic behind the scenes, and we fixed it so that it would work. And that's because we have a very good relationship with our co-issuer, which is Tomoel Payment Services. So they were able to do some things in the background to fix it. We're getting that audience up and going in points and in apps world. And on the other side, we're giving a different audience a simple online card that they can use for the first time, even to go to Costco and do their shopping. As simple as that, so they don't have to carry around loads of cash. Also, the feedback has been, particularly from the Asian market, that it's a great budgeting tool to have a prepaid card that tells you how much you spent after every transaction. Now, we didn't think of that as much of a feature. We thought that was standard. You get an email with your updated balance. But I can see as a user myself, you know how much money you have exactly. Whereas if this was a credit card, you wouldn't know till the end of the month exactly what you owed. You definitely wouldn't remember. You'd probably start querying some of the payments. But because everything is real time, you spend, you get an email with an updated balance. You know where you stand at any given time. And if you're here on it to send money home and that's your main motive, you obviously want to control your finances quite tightly. And a credit card is probably not the best option for you in that case.
How do you handle distribution? Is that purely word of mouth, or are you going to the places where your target audience is, and what type of places would that be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose for the Western world speaking audience, they're really already SIM users. They know about us. So that's a simple newsletter. It's a kind of an upsell. However, for the newer Asian countries, we're learning. We were very strong in Google Ads from a digital marketing perspective, but that's not the main driver of conversions. We found that Facebook and even Reddit is far more efficient. So we are targeting certain nationalities, specific areas, browser settings, and it's a bit of a learning experience for us because it's not something we've done before. We haven't gone very much in the offline sphere. In the last month, we attended two offline events, the Gaijin Pod Expo and the Expat Expo in Hamamatsu. And we got a great response from both of those. And I think we didn't realize this so much in the beginning. When you are in the financial area, people need to see you. People need to know you're there. The Japanese banks are everywhere, like Mizuho or SMBC. You see them, you know that they're a trustworthy brand just because they have physical presence. We came from nowhere in many ways. MobalPay is not a known brand. So initially, we got a lot of negative feedback, not because of anybody using the product and finding out it was bad. People just assumed this was a scam. We had to work on that. We had to say, no, actually. And one of the ways we worked on it was to provide social evidence that we're real, that we're actually people. There's people in the office. They can meet you, come to a clinic. We'll help you with any problems you have and that kind of thing. So it's a different approach than we've taken before with the SIM cards, which can be sold online. You don't need to meet anybody necessarily.
One of the nice features I saw on the website, because I appreciate it from my own card issuer, is that when you make a payment, you actually get an email. I think that is one of the easiest fraud prevention techniques that you can apply. You have some comfort that nobody is unauthorized use of this card number because it got packed somewhere. And I can go to the supermarket and within a few minutes, I get my email. So I
Mhm.
also know if somebody else uses it somewhere, I'd be very quick to shut things down.
On the topic of fraud prevention, we also have an online account. So if somebody is at all concerned, let's say they left the card at home or they live in a share house and they've left the card in a public space, they simply log into the online account and you can freeze your card. And we can unfreeze it for you then at any time if you find it. So that is a feature that's used quite often because it's a prepaid card. You know how much money is on it. If somebody was that way inclined, they could perhaps use it online for shopping, etc. Now, it's easy to freeze. Most people access the online account on their phones. In fact, I'd say the majority do, and they freeze it as and when they want to. There's also in their online account an option to translate the merchant name. It's a very simple feature, but I make use of it a lot. So, for example, you get a lot of katakana in merchant names. It's just a really long name, even though it could be really simple to read if it was in the actual name. But you just click the Google Translate plugin and you get the list then of Kokoichiban or whatever the merchant name is.
One of the concerns that the FSA always had, or also the Japanese Bankers Association, with foreigners is you leave and then you leave your bank accounts open and they
Hmm.
sit on all these debt accounts. And especially if they have a passport, which is a legal document, they need to pay an annual fee on that, whatever it is, 300 or 400 yen.
You touched on something interesting, the idea that when people leave Japan and they're required to close their bank accounts. I'm not saying again, this is what we're promoting the card as the main usage, but with a prepaid card, the card expires eventually. So once you've done your KYC, you've sent the card to the end user, that card is valid until the card expires. So if, for example, somebody, and in my case, I find this a very useful function. I'm on a contract again and a visa that will expire eventually. So at one point, the visa will expire. I may return back to Europe, but I'll still have a valid mobile pay card at that time. Will I use it there? Probably not. But what I would definitely do is on my return to Japan, whether it be a business trip or a relocation again, I have a card from day one. And that can solve a myriad of problems from the beginning. I would suspect that other people view that as an advantage as well, especially in the Filipino community. I've noticed from, again, customer interviews, some people have quite unusual visas that allow them to be in Japan, but they must return once a month on a regular basis. Once a month. It's like a renewing monthly visa. I've never heard of it before, but somehow it exists. And for these people, they're returning on a regular basis, renewing their visa on arrival. It's a perfect solution because they won't get a bank account on the basis of a visa like that.
Japanese banks and financial service providers are slowly but surely waking up to the economic power of foreigners in Japan as
Hmm.
well, because obviously domestic Japanese doesn't have growth. So well
Hmm.
pointed, there's only one part of the population that's growing. That's the number of foreign residents in Japan, right? And so I think Credit Saison started doing some real hands-on stuff. They have help centers or call centers also, even helping you rent a place or paying for the rent and having the guarantee agreements, all the stuff that's typically very difficult and unusual when you arrive in Japan for the first time. But I think it's just very few green sprouts. You seem to be safe for a little bit until the Japanese wake up to really what I call the economic power that the foreign community actually represents here in Japan.
We don't feel safe. We always feel we have to evolve and innovate and do lots of different things. But we also work in a similar place as you mentioned Credit Saison. We work with a lot of partners like Oak House, Share House Company, and other companies that we make sure that when people arrive, we hand them over to trustworthy partners so that they can get set up. That's part of our next year's plan where we have bundles of services with our partners so that you can get your SIM with cash and your card with cash. And in that bundle, there's also a couple of added values, upsells. So the plan is to keep going, help
And
residents.
ultimately, if the card has an issuance fee, albeit small, and a monthly fee, beyond that, I assume it's simply the interchange that you make money off.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's the business model. It is. And of course, we sell SIMs with it as well, which is very important to our business.
So the pay business, that's still a single digit percentage of your overall revenue.
It is. It is. No, definitely. It's very small. But I think if you were to look at our business and look at the future, you would say SIMs have become eSIMs overnight. Phone numbers, okay, there's still a lot of regulation in Japan around phone numbers. So it's for the moment, we're still on safe ground. But I think the payment area is the one with the most excitement. So I think we all see this as a very early seed, and the company may evolve around mobile pay rather than around the mobile SIMs in the next couple of years.
When in the end, your mobile phone is your bank account and your My Number card and your health insurance card. We need to get all the point cards out of our wallets and digitize them.
I wonder, Japanese people tend to like this, as I call it, point jockey. You jump from one to the next. I think it can be maximized. Have you ever seen some of the YouTube videos of people who live that life of linking accounts to payment cards to make points? It's a mystery of as to how people do it, but you've got to get onto the first rung. That's all I say. I'm going to tell you a very unusual usage study of a mobile pay card. And it's mainly long term residents who've been living in Japan who should be well advanced on the level of have no problems with payments. And they're unable to open up a corporate Japanese bank account when they're running their business. In order to separate their personal expenses and their corporate expenses, they use mobile pay as the corporate wallet. And they have their monthly statements and they can print it out. They can actually tell, because it's a translated version of it as well, to their accountant what they spent the money on. And you would be surprised how convenient that is deemed by a certain segment of the market. So it's one of those byproducts of what we initially intended. It's very interesting nonetheless. I can see why.
One of the things that you don't necessarily think about when you put out the product, and one it's in the hand of people who have certain needs, they figure out how to actually apply it. And then you can learn from that and then actually target that specifically.
We also had several people who claimed that they were eligible for a credit card, but they wanted to control their expenses. So they opted for a mobile pay card, which was also a little bit interesting because, of course, they didn't trust themselves necessarily in how they use their money. Or perhaps it's as simple as they have a set amount of money that they want to spend on a monthly basis. And this was an easier way of keeping that under control rather than overshooting the runway with a credit card.
The relationship there is one to one. So I have one phone number and I get one mobile pay card, or can I get multiple?
You can only have one per email address and per ID. So it's not connected to a phone number in this case. In fact, we made a very distinct point that you do not need a phone number because you can get one if you need to later on. And you definitely don't even need a Japanese bank account. So if you're coming and going or you're not eligible for a bank account even, then we're your first stop.
Got it. It's great to see these products and help the foreign community in Japan. We started off mentioning coffee. Let's round it out with the coffee once more.
Sure.
Where do I go to buy the coffee and taste it?
If you open the browser to charity-coffee.jp, that is our website. It's called also the Warm Hearts Coffee Club. And you can actually use MobalPay to make a payment for this as well if you have one of those cards. And you can either buy once off coffee from Malawi, which is imported all the way from northern Malawi, the high altitude place there. And it's roasted every Thursday in Kishima in a little artisan roastery. The person who roasts the beans, he's like an alchemist. He turns these coffee beans from Malawi into gold. And we ship the coffee around Japan on Friday to arrive usually on Saturday. If you're in Okinawa, perhaps you have to wait till Sunday. And we sell drip packs, we sell ground coffee, we sell beans, and we work with a lot of Japanese schools. For example, particularly this season, we'll have about 40 to 50 schools and universities who'll be doing offline events, selling our coffee to their parents and guardians, because all of the proceeds are sent back to Malawi to provide school meals, vital school meals for children over there. So it's a really good model. And last year we were given the Social Products Award. We'd like to think that MobalPay can follow in the tracks because, of course, there's a large charity component also in MobalPay's business model.
I'm getting off this call and get myself some coffee.
So am I. I've already started.
That's wonderful. Is there anything I could have asked that I haven't covered?
No, I'm glad we started on a kind of a more personal level because I thought you were going to grill me about licensing and stuff like that. I was trying to figure out how would I explain our business model. We're a prepaid card issuer. The card issuer is Mitsubishi UFJ Nikos because you need a bank to issue a card. And so we're then one step down with the co-issuer, who's Tomoel.
Glad we could connect. Thanks so much.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.